Hello, and welcome to another addendum. Today we're going to go over the Section 12 addendum for digital modes. Your computer goes ham digital. Alright, so the first thing I want to look at is a brand new question that was added to the question pool after I recorded the original lecture. And this question is hard to explain without actually reading the question, so I'm just going to read it for you. I'm not going to put anything on the screen, but I'll read this for you. Which of the following VHF UHF frequency ranges are limited to CW only? And there's a list of choices, and I'm just going to tell you right now there's an easy trick for this question because this question is really hard to remember. You just have to memorize to answer just a bunch of numbers. The correct answer is the only choice with the number 50 in it. So if you get any question that asks which frequency ranges are CW only, answer to any questions with which frequency ranges are CW only. If you get that type of question, for VHF to UHF, which of the following VHF or UHF frequency ranges are limited to CW only? The answer is the number 50 in it. And you can study this question more in your Gordon West manual. All right, so that was the first thing for this addendum, which was a little technical. Now we can move on to some more fun stuff. So I want to talk to you more about computers, and if you're a young person, maybe you like computers a lot. Computers have a lot of use in ham radio. In fact, most hams now have computers. And obviously for digital modes, you need computers for transmitting and receiving the digital modes, but computers serve other purposes too. In fact, one very common purpose of computers in ham radio stations is for logging contacts. Logging contacts. And what does logging contacts mean? That means you keep a log or a record of all the contacts you've had. So say that you contacted Willy Billy 5 Willy Billy Willy on June 15th at 8 a.m. on 14.070 megahertz. You can write that down in your computer. Your computer will put it in a file, and it's just nice to have a record of who you've contacted. Then if you ever hit Willy Billy 5 Willy Billy Willy again, you can look him up and say, oh, I hit him the other day on this frequency. So it's just nice to have a log. You're not required to have a log. It's just for your own personal use. Sometimes it's helpful to have a log if you're going for some kind of award. Then you might want to have a log so you have a record of who you talked to. If you're going for a contest and you want to win a ham radio contest, you want to have a log. That's required. You have to send that in to the contest people so they know how many points you got. So computers can be used for logging contacts. You can also log contacts on paper, but that's a lot more of a pain, so it's better to use a computer. All right, now going back to actually what the section is on, digital modes. For digital operation, when you're operating on digital modes, your computer needs to be connected to your radio. And we already talked about this a little, but the new test is putting more emphasis on it. So I'm just going to make this really clear, just exactly how the computer connects to the radio. So how the computer connects to the radio is this. Your computer needs access to the radio's transmit audio so that it can transmit stuff when you're sending stuff on digital modes. The computer's connected to the transmit audio. So usually the computer's speaker will be connected to the radio's microphone port so that the output from the computer goes into the radio's input so the radio can transmit what the computer wants it to. The computer also needs to be connected to the radio's receive audio so that it can receive digital modes. The receive audio, connected to the receive audio. So that it can receive stuff. So the speaker output of the radio might connect into the microphone input of the computer so it can go out of the radio and into the computer. And then finally, the computer needs access to the PTT, or the push to talk, which basically tells the radio when to transmit and when to stop. And this is important because the radio needs to know when to start and stop transmitting at the proper times for the proper operation of the digital mode. And the computer tells it to do that by having access to the PTT. All right. You'll remember my last video, you may remember I talked briefly about a mode called FT8, and I stated at the time that FT8 had just come out. Well, that lecture was recorded in summer of 2017. As of summer 2018, right now, FT8 has become a very, very, very popular digital mode. So much so that it's now on the ham radio exam, and you're going to be asked a question about it, perhaps. So what you have to know, basically, is FT8 is a digital mode. It's a digital mode and it transmits on 15-second intervals. It's a little unusual. So what happens is 15-second intervals. On 15-second intervals. So what happens is every 15 seconds it'll transmit, and then it'll receive for 15 seconds, and it'll transmit again. And you have to go into that cycle. And it's a bit unusual in that it forces you, it dictates when you must transmit and when you must receive. And if you want more information about that, feel free to ask me a question, but that's not on the test. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to leave it at that. But FT8 is a very cool digital mode. If you're interested in it, you can definitely research it some more. It's very useful, especially for weak signal work. All right, just a couple more things in this section. FT8 and other digital modes like it, you use those digital modes using a piece of software called WSJT. This is also new to the test. So WSJT is a software suite. It can do many different modes, including FT8. Whoops, WSJT. WSJT. It can do many different modes. You're going to get a question on your test, maybe, that asks you what types of modes WSJT can be used to operate on. All the answers will be correct, and this is because WSJT can do many different modes. And for the test, all the choices will be correct. That's a handy trick to remember for this question. You may want to take a note of that. All right. And finally, the last thing we're going to look at this in addendum, is Echolink. And I think I explained Echolink somewhere in this course. Actually, I don't think I've explained it yet. So Echolink is almost like cheating on ham radio. It's a piece of computer software that lets you talk to other hams over a computer program, but it's all over the internet. You never actually use the radio waves one bit. And as you can imagine, this is really cheating because you're not really using radio, you're using the internet. You might as well just use Skype or something. There's nothing really special about this, but nevertheless, people do still like Echolink. I mean, it does have it does use ham radio a little in that sometimes you can connect to a repeater over Echolink over the internet and then transmit on that repeater on the actual airwave. So there is some merit to that. Anyway, Echolink, they're testing on the exam now how you register for this piece of software, because this is a very popular piece of software. So all you have to really know right now is that for Echolink, to use it, you must register your call sign on their website. That's step one. And the second thing is you have to provide proof that you're a licensed ham, since they don't want any non-hams on the site. You have to prove that you own a ham radio license. So that's just something you need to know for the exam. And we're going to talk more about Echolink later in this course. And that's it for this addendum. So you can now go on and study the Gordon-West manual and take the quiz.